Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online news video with me, Sherman. Today guys, I don't know what to say about this. So if you guys don't know what this picture is, this is a picture of something that somebody posted on Twitter, and a lot of people think it has to do with a future Three Banners War content release. I don't think so. And I'll give you my thoughts on it here in a second. But I also want to point out a few things in here and give my thoughts and give my opinions. Now, everybody knows that the content releases for the year usually follow a certain pattern. Dungeon DLC, chapter release, dungeon DLC, overland release. But what if this year they decided to do something different because there is no explanation for what's leading into the new chapter? See, we don't have any storyline that leads into a new chapter. We can't say Murkmire leads us into a new chapter, besides the fact that we're involved with Imperials, to some degree. But that's it. Nothing else leads us into a new chapter. How do you bring new players into a new chapter that aren't part of the hero line story like we are? Because a lot of us have been here for a while. So let's just read this real quick, and then I'll go over my thoughts on this. Now, I'm not saying that we're not getting a dungeon DLC or an overland DLC at launch. I'm giving my opinions of this year. So, just the first drop DLC of this year. But I will give my opinions and my reasoning why. So let's read this. Adventure. I have followed your progress with interest and deemed you worthy of rendering assistance. Knowledge has come into my possession that will help me in the misguided Three Banners War, and restore peace to Tamriel. You shall accompany me. Be ready to answer my summons, and answer it quickly. I hate to be kept waiting. High Chancellor Abnur Tharn. So, this came to somebody in the mail. This was sent to a player. Now, let's look at this real quick. We have a broken tablet with a dragon's head. And not only is it any kind of broken tablet, it is a broken spellcrafting tablet. So a lot of people are assuming already that this is for the next chapter. See, with other chapters, they release things like a coin to players or something of that design to kind of give a hint on what's to come. But we're talking about a completely new storyline leading into the new year. If they open up with a dungeon DLC, it doesn't make any sense. One of the things that they said in the latest update 21 thing, which I'll go to real quick, I'm just gonna go up here and I'm gonna go to this, and then I'm gonna go to class and combat, and I'm gonna open up the update 21. Oops. First page, because if I open up anything else, it'll go into something else. But if you go down here, you'll see that one of the things that they say that they're working on is the gear sets for the new thing. A small number of other balance changes, many of which were in update 20, but they want to look at the new item sets for our Q1 2019 DLC. Now, here's the reason why I'm going to say I think that this first DLC is going to be an open world DLC, not a dungeon DLC. The new item sets. They want to make sure that the new item sets for Q1 2019 are going to be something that's going to work into the game really well. If they were to introduce a dungeon DLC, the dungeon DLC has 3 drop sets per dungeon. A light, a medium, and heavy, plus 2 monster sets. Doesn't seem like a lot to worry about. When you think about 3 crafted sets, 3 drop sets, and possibly trial sets. Those things make a lot more sense to have reason to focus on them first, so that those sets fall into play really well with what you're trying to do with the story or the game. So that's why I'm saying that this first one is going to be an overland adventure DLC, much like Murkmire, but it's going to lead us into the chapter story. Where does this come into play? Well, there is nothing in the history that says that Abnur Tharn was involved with the Three Banners War, or even trying to stop the Three Banners War. This is where a dragon break comes into play. This allows them to put in an alternate storyline has a dragon break that we repair and fix and put back into order. So I'm just, now again, please think about this. I'm just hypothetically speaking here, but it leads into a really great idea. First off, he says adventurer. He doesn't call us hero of Tamriel. He calls us an adventurer. He says he's been following us, our progress. So this means the long-term players. When you go down here, he says he has knowledge that is coming into his possession that will help him end the Three Banners War and bring peace to Tamriel. Not us, him. So it's allocating that he is the new hero. Then you go down here and it says, you shall accompany me. That means if it's a dungeon DLC, it doesn't make a lot of sense why we would accompany him to a dungeon. It would make sense for us to accompany him on an adventure in a new area to look for what he's looking for, to get the story started. I hate to be kept waiting and answer it quickly. That means this is him letting us know this is coming, and that the first DLC could possibly be an Overland Adventure DLC. That's kind of what it says to me as a player, is, hey, we want to do this. Now, it would be really cool to do this if they did it right. And it would make sense that the next crates are these Bandare trader ones, because it could have something to do with the fact that the traders travel the world. And they came into possession of something, a book or something that he got a hold of, and we start by going to that trader, finding out where they got it from. We go from there in search of it. So this makes ample sense to lead into a new DLC, not just a new chapter. Now, where does the chapter come into play? Right here. Spellcrafting. And not just spellcrafting, but they'd have to change it because we don't have just spells, we have abilities. So it'd have to be ability crafting, because if they just make it spells, it doesn't make a lot of sense for us to be able to alter abilities for just magicka and not stamina as well. So I could see them calling it ability crafting, and we can alter abilities to work as both magicka or stamina. I don't see them putting in tools that allow us to alter things too much to where we can create our own spells, but things to where we can alter spells and abilities and how they work. Like two-handed, dual-wield working as magicka and not just stamina. This way it opens up all weapon types to more options. That means those who want to play resto healers but use stamina can. So it opens the door to more options in the game. It opens up more variety. So that's what I see as happening for this. That's what this is explaining, is that they're showing us what's coming with the chapter, but they're also telling us, hey, be ready for this first adventure where we're gonna go in search of this object. And this object is going to be something that's going to be related to, or whatever, to the main story of the chapter itself. And it gives them a lot of time to build into that. Now, what about the rest of the year? Well, they could do a dungeon DLC and another dungeon DLC, but I think what they're going to do this year, just to be different, is do an Overland DLC with a trial. Not a mini trial, an actual trial. And that actual trial is going to have something to do with our character and maybe this story, or maybe an alternate part of the story leading to the end. Then we have another open world DLC with another trial. Then we have another dungeon DLC that just pertains with something that's going on somewhere in the world. Kind of like Wolf Hunter did. And like Dragon Bones did. And then you have another open world DLC that leads us up to the next year's content. So this way we get a definitive story content release throughout the year, and then next year, with the start of the new year, they can do a dungeon DLC, a chapter release, dungeon DLC, Overland DLC. And then they can do that for a couple years, and then finish that story to start us in a new one. But my point here is, this makes perfect sense. An adventure to go on, he wants us to go on an adventure with him, that would make sense for it to be a DLC that's open world. If it's a dungeon DLC, it doesn't make sense to lead into a new story. Because dungeons don't pertain a lot of the times to the main stories, because they want it to be something that's its own story. So that there's no driving point or reason to do the dungeons. They are separate from the main continuity of the game. So it just gives you reason to go do. Now, I wouldn't even be surprised if this new content wasn't a Overland DLC with a dungeon attached to it. Possibly. Because then they could do drop set, crafted set, dungeon set with a monster set. And that gives them, again, reason to state in Update 21 that they're looking at the new item sets for our Q1 release of 2019. Because it would be really, like I said, there's just not enough reason to look at it when you're looking at dungeon drop sets and monster sets. It makes more sense when it's crafted sets, how they fit into the game, and how they play their part, the overland sets and how they fit their part, and then the trial or whatever sets you're adding with it. It makes a lot more sense. And then also making racial passive ability, a balance pass on racial passive abilities, makes a lot of sense then too, because it's a dungeon DLC, or an overland DLC. You don't want it to be a dungeon DLC because people have to become accustomed to those changes to the build, to their builds, because of the races. This gives them a good ability to a place to start. Then in Update 22 and the next chapter, they can focus on the other things they want to do to the game. And that chapter can focus more on the other aspects of balancing, like skills and stuff. And how do you balance skills? By giving people the tools to create a lot of options in skills. And that's where ability crafting comes into play. So it does make sense for them to do this kind of a release versus a dungeon DLC chapter release. But that's just my opinions. They could still do a dungeon release with a chapter release. I could care less. It doesn't matter to me. I'll still play the content. But I would be more interested in a an Overland DLC that explains the story leading up to the new chapter and why this chapter is coming into play. Because otherwise there is no real reason. And I wouldn't even be surprised if it's something not even a little bit bigger than a usual typical DLC. We could even be reintroduced to a DLC adventure zone. Because it does say adventure. And that would make perfect sense of why Abnur Tharn's been watching us this whole time, because we're adventurers. Adding a new adventure zone might be something they could be doing in the next DLC. So we could be getting another Craglorn type area. And it would even explain why they're looking at the new sets coming into 2019. Because Craglorn didn't introduce just 3 sets. Or 4 sets. They added like 12 sets. They added 3 crafted sets, 3 drop sets for the zone. Then they had the trial sets. And each trial dropped 3 different sets each. It would make a lot of sense then for them to do this and have reason to focus on that again. There's a lot of things you could look at and say this is why. But I'm seriously thinking this first DLC is going to be an Overland open world DLC to start the journey into the newest chapter. And I think the tablet is to represent a dragon break that breaks the story to allow it to happen in the timeline the way we've already experienced it. Because a chapter itself, they're going to allow new people to start their characters in that chapter, like they did with Somerset and like they did with Morrowind. So the things that happen in the base game happen in an alternate timeline. They're dragon breaks because they did happen in an alternate time. And our characters basically get killed after that story, get brought back in time, and start it over in that storyline in those areas. Then we get caught back up to the main storyline of where we are today. So we do play through dragon breaks all throughout ESO. So it wouldn't be surprising if this isn't saying, hey, we're doing something different with this first DLC, we're creating a dragon break. Boom. Because there's people who started in Somerset but haven't played the main campaign factions or the Cadwell's Gold and Silver. So this makes sense. How do you add a dragon break to the Three Banners War if nobody's experienced it? You introduce a dragon break. But hey, I'm just a person who plays the game. That's it. I can speculate all day long on what this is, and you all know I can. So give me your thoughts and opinions in the comments below, guys. But other than that, I want to do this, and you guys know what comes next. If you guys like the video, go ahead and hit that like button. If you guys want to see more videos by me, you can subscribe. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day, and this guy might see you in game. Bye.